In January 2026, Boeing announces its best year since 2018. 600 commercial aircraft delivered. 1,173 net orders. The first time it outsells Airbus in 7 years. Inside Boeing, it feels like a comeback. But look at the other side of the scoreboard. Airbus delivers 793 aircraft, its 7th consecutive year as the world's largest plane maker. Its order backlog stands at 8,748 jets. At current production rates, that's roughly a decade of output already sold. 50 years ago, Airbus didn't exist. Boeing owned 2/3 of the sky. It had the money, the engineers, the political muscle, and a 15-year head start in the jet age. So how does the most dominant industrial company in America lose a lead that took half a century to build, to a rival it once dismissed as a European jobs program? This is the story of why Boeing couldn't stop Airbus. Seattle, 1958. Boeing delivers the 707, and international jet travel stops being a luxury experiment. 12 years later, it bets the entire company, more than $1 billion in 1960s money, on an aircraft twice the size of anything flying. The 747 nearly bankrupts Boeing before the first delivery. Then it becomes the most recognizable airplane on Earth. By the late 1970s, the commercial aircraft market is essentially American. Boeing, McDonnell Douglas, Lockheed. Boeing alone holds around 2/3 of it. Aviation historian John Newhouse describes an industry where Boeing sets the direction and everyone else responds. The company's real moat isn't any single plane. It's certification lineage. Every new 737 variant inherits its 1967 type certificate, which means airlines can add aircraft without retraining pilots from scratch. Cheap for customers. Profitable for Boeing. Remember that moat. It becomes the trap. Toulouse, France, 1970. 4 governments, France, Germany, Spain, and eventually Britain, pool their fragmented aerospace industries into a consortium called Airbus. American executives call it a political project. For a decade, they're right. By 1979, only 81 Airbus A300s are in service worldwide. Then, Airbus does something Boeing can't. It starts from a blank sheet. The A320, delivered from 1988, is the first airliner with digital fly-by-wire controls and a side stick instead of a yoke. More importantly, Airbus designs its entire future family around one cockpit. A pilot rated on one Airbus can cross-qualify to the others in days, not months. It's Boeing's commonality moat, rebuilt on 1980s technology instead of 1960s technology. Airlines notice. The A320 collects over 400 orders before the first production aircraft even flies. But the real damage comes from a decision Boeing makes about a plane it kills. 2 decisions, actually. And neither looks catastrophic at the time. First, 1997. Boeing acquires McDonnell Douglas for $13 billion. Industry analysts and former engineers will later argue the acquired company's culture takes over. An engineering company becomes a shareholder returns company. Headquarters moves from the Seattle factories to Chicago. Development budgets face a new question. What does this do for the stock? Second, 2004. Boeing discontinues the 757, the mid-size, long-range workhorse. Betting airlines will split between the smaller 737 and the bigger 787. The bet leaves a hole in the middle of the market. Airbus quietly stretches the A320 into the A321 and aims it directly at that hole. Then, December 2010, Airbus pulls the trigger. The A320neo. New engines, 15% lower fuel burn, same cockpit. Airlines place over 1,000 orders within months. In 2011, American Airlines, a Boeing exclusive customer for decades, prepares a massive split order that includes Airbus jets. Boeing has two options: spend a decade and tens of billions on a clean sheet replacement for the 737, or bolt the new engines onto an airframe designed in 1967 and get to market fast. It chooses fast. The decision is reportedly finalized in a matter of weeks. There's just one problem. The 737 sits low to the ground, a 1960s feature for airports with stairs instead of jet bridges. The new engines don't fit under the wing. Engineers mount them higher and further forward, which changes how the aircraft pitches. To preserve the one thing the whole strategy depends on, no new pilot training, Boeing adds a piece of software called MCAS to push the nose down automatically. Most pilots are never told it exists. October 29, 2018. Lion Air Flight 61 hits the Java Sea 13 minutes after takeoff. 189 people die. Investigators focus on MCAS and a single faulty angle of attack sensor. March 10, 2019. Before that investigation concludes, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 crashes 6 minutes after leaving Addis Ababa. 157 people die. Same system. Within days, regulators worldwide ground the 737 MAX. The FAA, Boeing's own regulator, holds out longest, then follows. The grounding lasts 20 months. Direct costs exceed $20 billion. Estimates including cancellations and lost orders run far higher. And the crisis doesn't arrive alone. COVID collapses air travel. The 787 line pauses deliveries over quality defects. In January 2024, a door plug blows out of an Alaska Airlines MAX at 16,000 feet, and the FAA caps Boeing's production. That year, Boeing delivers 348 aircraft. Airbus delivers 766, more than double. So was MCAS the reason Boeing couldn't stop Airbus? No. MCAS was a symptom. The investigation points to 3 structural traps, and Boeing walked into all of them. Trap 1. The airframe. Every A320 advantage, bigger engines, more efficient variants, the long-range A321XLR, flows from an airframe with room to grow. Boeing's low-slung 1967 design has none. Each competitive response has to be an engineering workaround, and workarounds compound. Trap 2. Switching costs, in reverse. Commonality locks customers in. But once an airline defects to Airbus and eats the retraining cost, the same economics lock it out of coming back. Every crisis year converted lifetime Boeing customers into lifetime Airbus customers. Trap 3. The legal dead end. Boeing's other weapon was litigation. In 2004, the United States filed at the World Trade Organization over Airbus launch aid. Europe counterfiled over Boeing's NASA and Pentagon subsidies within 24 hours. It became the largest dispute in WTO history. The verdict, 17 years later. Both sides guilty, neither side compliant, tariffs traded, then truce. Trade economist Gary Hufbauer predicted the outcome years in advance. 2 Pyrrhic victories. Not a single aircraft order moved. Boeing couldn't out-engineer Airbus on a 60-year-old airframe, couldn't win back airlines it had already lost, and couldn't litigate its rival out of existence. Every exit was sealed by its own earlier decisions. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Boeing's strategy worked. The 737's certification lineage generated decades of profit precisely because it avoided the cost of starting over. Airbus didn't beat Boeing by being smarter. It beat Boeing by being younger, by having nothing worth protecting when the technology changed. By the time protecting the 737 became more expensive than replacing it, Boeing no longer had the balance sheet, the regulatory goodwill, or the engineering bandwidth to replace it. The asset and the liability were the same airplane. Boeing is not finished. Its 2025 order book proves airlines still want a two-supplier market. Nobody wants to negotiate against a monopoly. But the structural scoreboard hasn't moved. Airbus's backlog is a decade deep, and Boeing still doesn't have an answer to the A321. The lesson isn't about airplanes. Every dominant company eventually faces Boeing's 2011 choice: cannibalize your own legacy while it's still profitable, or defend it until the market does the cannibalizing for you. Boeing chose defense. And that's the principle this entire 50-year war comes down to. The most dangerous asset on any balance sheet is the old product that's still making money. Because right now, in Shanghai, a state-backed manufacturer called Comac is running the exact playbook Airbus ran in 1970. And this time, it's Airbus that has a legacy to protect. That's the next story.